Imagine knocking on doors in an attempt to win a House rep seat as a Democrat in one of the most affluent areas in the country, at a time where politics are a little dicey to say the least. During this process, many a Republican voter surprisingly admit that you're kind of normal for a Democrat. Eric Morse talks about his failed attempt to represent Missouri House District 89, why he ran, and some of the enlightening conversations with his neighbors that have helped him better understand our staunch Republican state of Missouri with hopes of turning it back purple. Eric improved upon the best D ever in this district by over 10%. Whether he decides to run again is TBD. I hope it's a big D, as in definitely. Let's go. Eric Morse. How's it going, man?
It's going all right. Thanks for having me here.
Appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
You forewarned me of the seasonal illness / I might not have my voice. It's that time of year, but
Yeah.
you know,
Apologies to you and the listeners for whatever I sound like.
well, I kind of like, I have a theory over on in my Soccer Dad Pod world. Anytime I have a guest on that is European in particular and has an accent, it drives up ratings because it alludes to a higher intellect when it comes to football.
Sure. Yeah.
So a raspier voice in regards to a political candidate or a politically engaged individual just makes you feel / sound war torn.
Hey, I just got back from leading protests.
Right? I won't ask you what you were chanting. I appreciate you joining me, though.
Yeah.
As we were talking off mic here, leading up to bouncing off here, the whole point of what I'm trying to do is just expand the conversation, because I feel as if I don't think anybody could deny that the world we live in is just being structured and ran and overrun by bias bubbles. Mm-hmm. It's my new favorite word, by the way. Two words, bias bubble. And so I wanted to bring you on. You had just asked me, like, so how did you come across me? And as I was explaining, and I really truly believe that simplistically all politics are local. Right. Yeah. You know, your teachers, your streets, your trash, your safety, police, fire, et cetera, et cetera. And then it all grows out from there.
Yeah.
We all would like to believe that we are communicable disease experts or, Cold War theorists. Totally. Right. But the reality is no. Yeah. But that's way more fun on socials. So anyway, your candidate page was popping up. I followed it, just kind of watched it. And one of the reasons I wanted to reach out was it seemed as if you kind of understood in so much as the type of content that you were putting out there, mm-hmm. How to communicate via social media. Specifically, Thanks. What I'm talking about are the reels. Mm-hmm. Start the camera, turn it on, put some big old, bold font captions on there, and just talk. So why don't we just do that? That's kind of what I want this thing to be. I want our conversation to be like one of your reels, just super loose and exploratory, explanatory.
So we can do 10 takes and I'll just edit it down. That's cool.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have the budget to edit, so we're gonna go no cuts.
Yeah.
Give me a quick, but put a little pin in the map though, because you've had a little bit of a nomad lifestyle.
Yeah.
But you're a St. Louis and to the core originally, and now you're back. Give us a little bit of a timeline.
Sure. So the long story, born and raised here. Both my parents taught at Principia School, where I now work. After college, I graduated college in the mid-'90s.
Did you go to Principia as well?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My father was the football coach there, taught history, taught government. And we might end up circling back to this, but he was a Vietnam War vet and, football coach and very religious man. It kind of gives you a sense of where he was coming from ideologically.
Sounds like a movie character.
Yeah. I mean, he it's easy. Interesting. You're talking about communications and social media. It's kind of easy to create an archetype with him. And he was, as all humans are, more three-dimensional than it sounds. But yeah, I mean, he certainly was raising me in a certain way. It was the 80s in St. Louis, West County, St. Louis. So we were all Republicans, and it was
that loved the Steamers and
love
drank
the
Busch beer.
Steamers. Yeah, St. Louis football Cardinals, Jim Hart.
Oh my God, at Busch Stadium, right?
Oh yeah. Side note: I got to attend the last football game at Busch Stadium.
Really?
We played the Giants and Lawrence Taylor, and yeah,
LT. Whatever happened to LT? And he always had that one earring, single earring,
Yeah.
the cross.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think LT walked so that Brian Bosworth could run.
Yeah. I see what you did there. Okay, so we asked the question. You talked about it.
Yeah.
Everybody. What high school? Principia. Principia is a look. Respectfully, it's a highbrow school. It's a liberal arts school, and it's not cheap. It's in a beautiful area. Where did you guys live? Maybe that would be the second part of my
Sure.
put that pin in that map.
Sure. So we lived on campus. Principia has,
wow.
as you said, it's a beautiful school. It's got a giant campus, much larger than they own more property than it appears when you just visit the school, including a little small subdivision of houses where faculty and staff are able to live. So my parents lived on campus. My brother and I grew up on campus, like using my dad's key to get into the gym and playing basketball whenever we wanted and that kind of thing. It was
Was it like a scene from Porky's?
There might have been some scenes. It was, a cross between Porky's and maybe a little bit of Stand By Me, but because it's wooded and weird.
John Hughes experience, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
It was an idyllic childhood. I mean, that campus, because Principia is a boarding school, that campus is like gated and they've got security. And so we were always safe. And, of course, we're Gen X kids. It was the 80s, and we would just go out and just be
Ride
out.
bikes.
Yeah, riding bikes and climbing trees. And
Wait for
doing
the
all
street
that.
lights.
Yeah. So that was my childhood. Grew up, graduated from DePaul University in Indiana.
DePaul, P-A-U-W.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Although later in life, when I would meet people and they thought I was saying DePaul, lots of times I just let them make that mistake because they were
Chicago's
more
cooler
impressed.
than Indiana.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got to play. I played football in college, and DePaul is a more impressive school.
There you go.
But yeah, so after college, moved first to Seattle. I was in Seattle for 10 years, right as grunge was happening. And I really quickly got kind of subsumed in the music industry, loved it, got obsessed, started up an online magazine while I was out there, which was about music, art, and literature. And then in 2004, we won Best New Online Magazine at South by Southwest.
Nice.
And I was convinced that this was it. My ship was coming in. I was going to make it big, and I moved to New York. My ship did not come in. But I continued kicking around the New York area in marketing and advertising until my old music industry people called me up in 2010, I think it was, and I took a job at Warner Music Group, running their digital marketing. They have like an internal agency that serves the different record labels, Atlantic Records and Warner Brothers Records. Anyway, marketing, music, entertainment, and then marriage, 4 kids, divorce, pandemic. And so during the pandemic, like everyone, I was really trying to figure out what next and, what am I doing here and what's the best place for the kids to be. And this opportunity at Principia presented itself. And so I moved the kids back here, moved into a house 2 doors up from the house I grew up in.
So
on
you're
campus.
on the campus?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm here with my kids. Their mom is still on the East Coast. and we've been making a go of it
So-
for 4 years now.
So you're single dadding it in St. Louis on the Principia campus,
Yeah.
working in marketing, kind of back to your roots.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier, doing some marketing services for other individuals as well. So just staying in that world. Let me just ask the obvious question.
Yeah.
Why in the hell would you want to run for office?
The long answer, like much in my life, goes back to my dad. I mean, one of the ethics that he raised my brother and me with is, if you don't like it, change it. He used to say, if it is to be, it is up to me. And
Wait, say that again. If it is to be, it's up to me.
yeah, if it is to be,
Got
it's
it.
up to me. Yeah.
Got it.
We got to a point. I'd lived on the West Coast in a very blue area. I'd lived on the East Coast in a very blue area. I was back home in a very red area, and didn't feel like home anymore. And while I was here, the abortion ban got passed. And one day, while I was at work, I got the phone call that all of us parents dread, which is there's been a gun found at your kid's school. Nobody was in harm's way. This is really just a story of a loose gun. But it was enough for me to be like, the fuck are we doing here, man?
Well, isn't the real story the elicited feelings?
Yes. Yeah. And feeling like, let's be honest, St. Louis, as a region and a community, is highly segregated. There are people who feel probably unjustly safe and protected, and there are people who feel very justly like they're in harm's way. A lot of the time.
Right.
And I live out in an area where people have invested a lot of money to feel insulated from a lot of the city, crime and experience from top to bottom.
Well, so that district in particular, I don't normally do homework, but I wanted to at least get a frame of reference in my head as far as what is HD 89, House District 89. And when you look at the map, what screams out to me is it's probably one of the, if not the, richest districts, not only in Missouri, but in America.
Yeah, it's on the list.
You're talking about Huntley. You're talking about Frontenac. If you take Huntley by itself, it is. It's in the. I believe it's in the top 5 in the country as far as neighborhoods / wealth. It's not a normal district. When you zoom out and you think of this American life, that district is that American dream, not this American life.
Yeah.
So when something like that happens, can you talk a little bit about, because I'm sure all the other parents were talking, and obviously a lot of this is clearly just kind of narrative more than anything. I'm just trying to get a feel for what the vibe was, because things that burn down the rest of America or burn the roots of what everybody's trying to achieve, et cetera, for the most part don't occur in that district.
Yeah.
So when something like this pops up, even as completely quote harmless as as harmless as that is, occurs, it still probably sent some shockwaves through the pickup line.
Yeah.
Kind of what was going through your mind at that point as it pertained to what it meant to the community?
Yeah. I want to answer that with another anecdote, actually. Not long after that, I'm trying to get the timing right. It was a few months later. I happened to be meeting with a friend who was a friend I'd grown up with, and she now works at another private school in St. Louis, and it's a prominent. Well, it's Westminster Academy, prominent Christian school, very, you might say, conservative coded. And
That's fair.
We were getting together at the Starbucks down the street from down the street, Clayton Road from Principia.
In Frontenac.
Yeah, well, this one's in the town and country. Yeah,
Oh, the other way.
the other way. Yeah,
Deeper into the woods.
exactly. She and I are on different sides of the political spectrum, but we're friendly, and that's fine. And it doesn't cause any problems. But I don't bring up politics for the most part when I'm just hanging out. But that day, as we were chatting, I looked over, and 2 tables away from me was an older gentleman who was sitting, working on his laptop, and he had a holstered gun on the table. And I said, "So, be honest with me. Is that really okay with you? Like, this is where we're going with this, right?" And she was shocked, and she said, "Absolutely not." And the next time we got together, she said, "I don't want to go back to that Starbucks. Let's go somewhere else." And she said,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
but I'm envisioning 65, 70-year-old dude, whatever, drinking his frappe, putting his Clint Eastwood on the table.
yeah.
Like, what did he think? Did he think it was like Doc Holliday or something? Like, because he had to have known that he was not doing that for comfort or for protection.
Right.
It was for imagery.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead and continue. Like her response in particular.
She was shocked and felt fearful. And I feel like that goes back to the answer to your question about, how the rest of the community felt when they found out about this loose gun that had showed up at our school. And where I was going with it a few minutes ago was that it felt like this sort of veil of insulation against the things that happen, quote unquote, out there had been pierced a little bit for these people, for this community. And there was some shock going through it. And so just to answer your first question of, what got me to run for office, it was that moment where I was like, I've shown up for every, protest I can. I've donated the small amount of expendable income that I have. What next? Like, what can I do for my 4 kids to make sure that I'm doing everything I can as a parent? And I feel strongly about the abortion issue. I feel strongly about the number of guns that are on the street and the lack of regulation. And so I felt like, well, this is the next step I can take.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
And I want to get into your legislative priorities as you laid them out on your candidate page here in just a little bit, but I want to talk more about kind of entering the race, the race itself, and then most importantly your postmortem, the article that was sent to Let's Chat, or I forget the publication, but I read the article. It was funny because I think that take out the Missouri descriptors and the suburban descriptors, et cetera. Those conversations are universally true across this country for the most part. So you run against Dr. Haruza, I believe dermatologist / plastic surgeon, something like that. He fixes skin, things like that. You lose. What was the spread?
I got 44. We're almost within 10 points.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, So that's in politics. That's a big spread.
Yeah, it's a big spread.
But when you really start to look at the demo, kind of the statistics there, you're talking about a population of only 36,000. Take out kids, take out non-registered voters. You're 15,000 people maybe eligible voters, 20 maybe.
23.
23 is the number. Yeah.
Yep.
So we're not talking about a big number, but realistically, that number, I believe, without looking it up, probably mirrored the exact same number of the spread, Trump to Harris for the state of Missouri, because I think it was 56-43, something like that. Did you think? Well, nobody runs to lose.
Yeah.
But did you legitimately think you could win?
I did, honestly. And I knew how ridiculous that was. So here's the history of this race. No Democrat has ever won this seat.
You mean the richest county or district in America?
Yeah, strange.
Democrats don't do well there?
Go figure.
Oh, wow.
No Democrats ever won this seat. The last is, I want to say, 12 years, the Democrats have hovered around 40%. And the reason why I thought I could do better was because, for one thing, the former guy, who we can talk about, was term limited, so it was an open seat. I was running against Haruza, who had already run and lost for state senate in 2022. To be totally candid and honest, I felt like his communication skills, his skills as a candidate weren't super strong. And I really felt that if I could get out and meet as many of those 23,000 people face to face as possible, that so they would understand that I was kind of one of them. And that, I think, speaks to a question you might end up having, which is, what's my sort of theory of the case?
So you're saying your bedside manner was going to slingshot you over the doctor?
Well, I'm sorry to say.
You don't need it. I'm just being.
The Google reviews of Dr. Who's actually say his bedside manner is not the strongest. But
he's a Republican.
He's a Republican.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he has that R.
Okay, well, we figured that out.
Yeah.
So election night comes. You are a very small piece of a massive puzzle that was occurring on that evening, nationally, statewide, regionally, etc. Numbers are coming in. You probably, you knew, I have to assume, probably fairly early in the evening, like, okay, was it there? Now, if the glass is half full, if the best Democrat had been pulling 40 points, you increase that by 10%. Mm-hmm. That's a 10% better bump. But it's still an L. But you're sitting there as part of a losing team, the Democrats, on a night in which, everything kind of went the other way. Mm-hmm. Speak to just that evening as you're watching the results come in. Were you at a party? Were you solo? Were you home with your kids? Did you have a little room with some friends and family?
Yeah.
And as the results are coming in, because you're looking for a really small ticker with, your district results, but you're getting a much bigger ticker coming across the screen with what's going on nationally. Talk about that night.
Wow, man. So just to set the scene a little bit, we rented out a Mission Taco.
The Tilfords. It is my mission to expand the Session brand.
Oh.
You see what I did there?
Yeah, good job.
Session Taco.
I wasn't sure if I should, go with their new brand or not.
Some people, I'm not encouraging, but if people use the word Mission Taco, it is what it is.
It was a Mission Taco on November 5th. It's a Session Taco now.
Yeah, there you go.
Still excellent food.
That's the same. Yeah, it's awesome. Friends, family?
Friends, family, myself, and a few other candidates in the district. We all, went in on this. So there was a pretty big party. And there were some candidates who had a much better chance of winning than I did. So there were people, we walked in optimistic.
Can you name names? What were the other candidates?
Sure. Colin Lovett, who was out in kind of the Ellisville area.
Yep.
He had lost in 2022 by 181 votes. And he ran a terrific campaign, blew the doors off, did everything right, and lost by like 75 votes.
This year.
Fearless Joe Peerless, who was running in State Senate 15. He was there. Jacqueline Cotton, who is 101st. She's farther out in like Wildwood. She had a harder race. Just a few other, state house and state senate.
Anybody in the room win?
No.
So
Yeah.
so describe the scene then.
Yeah.
As these numbers are coming in.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. I ran this race for a year and a half of my life. I put everything that I had into it. And at the end of the day, I was under no illusions that, my race was the important race. In fact, I remember at one point during the campaign saying, God, worst case scenario is I win and Trump wins. Because, I would hate to be like pounding my chest when we're watching the country go down the tube. So very quickly, any kind of interest in my race one way or the other, or frankly in any of the other races, subsided as we watched the results come in nationally.
But the tacos were good.
Tacos were so good.
Did you double
My
down?
kids were
Did you
playing.
double down on the tequila as the numbers were coming in?
A lot of people did. I had to get home with my kids, so yeah.
Hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the postmortem.
Sure.
The postmortem of your own experience within the region. But I really want to get into the article, your takeaways, and start to connect the dots between what you actually learned and heard and discussed, walking 1.2 miles between estates in your district, and the results. So we'll be right back after this.
Great. How's my level, by the way?
You're good. Good. You spent all those years in music. You should. You got a little bit of skill in there somewhere, right? We were talking about election night 24, your own experience, a room full of defeateds. But, I read the article. I'm going to take a peek here real quick. It is, where'd it go? It was in the Goodman Project, released it. Anyway, it was your postmortem, your experience in the Show Me State. Yep. Show me what you think. A couple things. One of the early things you pointed to was statistically from 2012 to 2020, your district, the 89th, moved 16 points from deep red to purple. This is occurring at a time where it appears that Missouri as a whole has been going the other way.
Yeah.
And then within the St. Louis region, which historically was really a bellwether, right? Missouri in general was a bellwether until Obama, and that was just a bridge too far.
Yeah.
For Missourians.
Yeah.
So let me get to the days, the weeks immediately following the election, because I believe your article was released around the 20th of November, a couple weeks later. What was your initial, your elevator pitch recap of what happened on election night? Not just from your district, from the perspective of your district, but really kind of the simplistic macro view and the swing back to Trump.
Man, like so many people, I spent a lot of time just trying to make sense of it all. And that article was written as you mentioned, sort of a postmortem, but also as a cumulative result of looking back on all the conversations I had with people at the doors. The opportunity to go and knock on my neighbors' doors for a year was honestly not something I would have chosen, and it was amazing.
So I pulled the article up, just for a frame of reference for
Sure.
the listeners, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes as well. Title of the article was "The Myth of the Rightward Shift in Conversation with Red State America."
Yeah.
And then your subtitle here is I ran for office as a Democrat in a red district in a red state. Here's what I found. Mm-hmm. What did you find?
Well, the TLDR of the article is the district as well as the state as a whole.
With all due respect, I did read it. It wasn't too long. So
that was for the listener, so they don't have to, take.
Okay, let's go over the crib notes.
Okay, great. I'm sure everyone listening knows that we did pass Amendment 3, and we did pass an increase in the minimum wage, and we did pass paid sick leave. So
for the listeners, Amendment 3, just in case you were not a Missourian, Amendment 3 was a reversal of the previous Attorney General Eric Schmidt, now Senator Schmidt, had signed a complete abortion ban in the state of Missouri. Amendment 3 reversed that. Basically, simply put, legalizing choice again.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Essentially, what you might say, codifying Roe v. Wade, at least for Missouri.
Right. Federal government pushed it back to the states. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what, I believe states should decide. Okay, great. Our state decided.
Yeah. So, if you look at the Democratic Party historically, at least in modern political history, what are some of our priorities? One of them is pro-choice, choice for women, including, expansion of women's rights and equity across the board. Another one is helping out the worker, especially boosting minimum wage.
Wages and benefits,
paid sick leave. Missouri, by and large, largely passed these initiatives. It proved that the citizens of Missouri agreed more with the classic Democratic Party platform than with the Republican Party platform.
Which is a big reason why the Republican Party in Missouri right now is doing everything in their power to adjust and basically take away ballot initiative process.
Yeah.
They claim, quote, to keep foreign money out of our elections.
Yeah.
That's not it.
No.
It's because they don't like the reality that, for the most part, liberal Democratic policies, when put to the people of the state of Missouri, are overwhelmingly voted for, in conjunction with putting MAGA Republicans in statewide offices, federal offices.
That's right.
That's the dichotomy. That's the irony of Missouri.
Yeah.
So anyway, I interrupted you. Postmortem. Proceed.
So that's where people are on policy. But the Republicans keep winning on communications. And I can tell you that I was knocking on doors and I would talk to people and we would agree on everything when it came to local politics and individual or community needs. You're talking about all politics being local. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, over and over again, I would hear people bust out with, what do you think about all these Chinese and what is it about the Democratic Party that they're like lacing Tootsie Rolls with fentanyl or whatever? Like, well, you would bust out with this crazy Fox News talking points.
Yeah, you bring it up as conservative media talking points, specifically the immigrant invasion, low IQ Kamala, and the woke military.
Yeah.
When they started using that kind of terminology, for me, this is one of the reasons I'll never be able to run for office, because the second somebody says to me, well, what do you think about the immigrant invasion? I'm going to be like, where's your tinfoil?
Right.
Go put it away.
Right.
You, however, you were running for office, so you couldn't say that. Yeah. So how did you respond to blanket conservative? I'm not even going to call it conservative. That's disrespectful to conservatives. How did you react to MAGA talking points?
Well, it was interesting because, and this goes back to what you brought up earlier, which was that this district has moved centerward, moved purple, as the state has moved more red. And that's in large part because of the affluence and because these are old school Republicans who I think would continue to be Republicans as long as they could, but couldn't. Trump was a bridge too far. They were not MAGA Republicans. They were just sort of old school institutionalists.
Or as
they wanted their low tax rate.
Or as pollsters would say, which is the only demographic that the D's won nationally, college educated.
Yes. College educated, professional. Yep, that's right.
Oh my God. This is so disheartening.
I know. Where was I going with that?
Well, this postmortem, you talking to him, give me.
Oh, you're asking, yeah.
Obviously, you don't remember the names of all the people that you knocked on their doors,
right.
but give me a story. Give me an example of, maybe the extreme in which somebody was like, MAGA to a point of, this and this and this, and it's all just straight from, Truth Social.
Oh God, yeah.
How did those conversations go for you, maybe internally and outwardly? How do you even address that?
Yeah.
Or do you just say, thank you for your time, go, hope your lawn boy cuts that pattern properly?
Yeah. A lot of the time I said, thank you for your time, politely. I will admit, and this is a confession, but it's also important. I will admit that I had an ulterior motive. I did want to be elected to state house because I felt like there were things that I could do in there that would be beneficial to my community, my state. Secondly, and plan B underlying this was to get a little bit more civil discourse into our communities.
Yep.
As I was saying earlier, I wasn't sure I was very psyched about knocking on everybody's door and having a lot of these face-to-face conversations with people who I knew disagreed with me. But I felt, and the more doors I knocked, the more confident I got that when we talk to each other, we can talk to each other. And so I did have some batshit crazy conversations. I knocked on one door of this couple that ended up being very MAGA. In fact, she was running for some office. I don't remember what. And she was like, her tagline was like MAGA Melissa or something like that.
Did you not notice the Mike Lindell poster in the living room?
I did not.
The My Pillow guy.
That'd be amazing. And the guy I was talking to was like, so if you Democrats get in charge, then is everybody just going to be having abortions on their front lawn? And like, what about the communists? And there's like really crazy stuff. But we had this lively conversation. I was like laughing at how crazy he was, and we were sort of bantering back and forth. But it was clear that he meant it, or he believed it. I don't know that he believed that abortions would be on the front lawn, but
they do. They think that it's like 11th month abortion.
Oh yeah, post birth abortion. Yeah. So there was quite a bit of that, and those people I wasn't concerned about because they were never going to vote for me, and I wasn't going to try to change their mind. There's a few people a few stories I referenced in the article that were very interesting to me. One of them was a doctor who his personal policy positions were very much in line with where I was, and we chatted for a long time, and enjoyed each other's company and laughed and sort of like poked fun at each other. But at the end he was like, well, and he mentioned having personally met my opponent and not really, feeling
vibing.
much for him. Yeah. Not vibing. And he said, I'm still going to vote for the other guy. You know that, right? Because I'm a Republican. He's a Republican.
Well, let me ask you kind of a question in regards
Sure.
to your district and kind of, the conversations that you were having, because realistically, okay, you talk about improving your district.
Yeah.
Let's be really honest with ourselves here for a second. Again, it's one of the richest areas in America. You don't have HOA issues.
Yeah.
The crime is virtually non-existent. The schools that are in the area are off the charts from a private standpoint, and then as well as the public options that are in there. So when you talk about improving your district, to the vast majority of people there, because the median household income there, I looked that up, that's 180K. We're talking 2 to 3x the national average. And that 180K, I kind of laugh at that because, look, you're not living, west of Lindbergh right there on a $180,000 income. Put a 5x in front of that.
Yeah.
What are you really selling to them as far as like how you can improve their district? Because it's one thing to go and get into a friendly debate and a I gotcha conversation in regards to national politics and woke terminology and all this other stuff that everybody believes is the crux of all politics. It's a whole other thing to say, look, in this district, here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
How did you address that chasm?
Well, you mentioned earlier this MAGA takeover of the Missouri state government. And also I appreciated the point you made. You said, I don't even want to call it conservatives because that's an insult to conservatism. The MAGA takeover is not a conservative ideology or a conservative movement. And so
it's a populist one.
It's a populist one, and it also is very heavy-handed. It's a big government. It's a lot of government interference, and these people you're talking about, they feel like they're doing just fine on their own. They don't want government telling them what to do. And particularly, we have a lot of very empowered women who don't want to be told what they can and can't do with their bodies. So the Amendment 3, the abortion amendment, was huge. And my district voted overwhelmingly in support of overturning the ban.
Isn't it funny, though, that within suburban St. Louis in particular, when you look at the numbers and you look at the Amendment 3 results that came in, and then you look at the Trump in particular, but even the other House and Senate seats that were won by Republicans, you would have assumed that the Venn diagram would have made those races a lot closer as far as women in particular, or dads or kids coming out that like may or may not even be in favor of, or, personally, having an abortion, right? Maybe they're Catholic, but they're pro-choice, right? And they're pro giving women that autonomy. You would have thought that those races would have been a lot closer, and they weren't. So as a dad, as a Democrat, as a pro-choice advocate, explain why you think that those two worlds didn't collide closer.
Honestly, I gotta say, and this is sort of a mea culpa, maybe. Communications. Just a failure of communication, because these people did walk into the voting booth and say, and, put their name down and say, I want to overturn this abortion ban. I'm standing up in favor of the freedom of choice.
I want to increase minimum wage. I want to expand Medicaid. I want to smoke weed legally and sports gamble.
But there's a connection. There's a next logical step that needs to be made there, which is I also need to elect, representatives and officials who are going to support and uphold and maintain that, go down the road, and that was the disconnect. They didn't. I don't know that there was I shouldn't say that. There was clearly not a pervasive feeling that I need to elect Eric Morse in order to help, maintain my freedom of choice. There was like, oh, I did that. Now I can get back to the Republicans.
Let's talk a little bit about language. You touched on it. Let me just frame this a little bit too, though. I am clearly not a Trump supporter. I would love to be invited back to a conservative candidate, that doesn't scare the shit out of me. Because fundamentally I have a lot of conservative principles that I believe in, primarily on the financial side, the economic side. Socially, I'm with you. Just let people do what they want to do, and I've got kids. I want them to live in a world in which, empathy leads. But when I sit back and I look at my own personal postmortem in my head and via some conversations that I've had, the DNC in particular and the funnel down communications and the strategy that was distributed amongst, the big races that did matter, they wrote off Missouri out of the gate. They're like,
Sure.
we're not winning there, we're not spending there, right? The language was, in my opinion, the fatal flaw.
Mm-hmm.
Take Amendment 3. And you've mentioned it a couple times here, abortion access, abortion rights. How hard would it have been, just from a communication standpoint? Because here's the deal. Whenever somebody that's sitting on the fence, or maybe they're, they would like to believe they're a liberal Catholic, but they're still a Catholic, or maybe they're, pro-women, but, love their family and they could never go through it. Every time the word abortion is thrown out there, there's a direct mental connectivity between that word and killing.
Yeah.
That's how it is viewed,
Yeah.
right? What was wrong with pro-choice for the 50 plus years leading up to this?
Yeah.
Why, in your opinion, did the DNC decide that we are going to put all of our eggs in the basket, even the expensive ones, into the term abortion?
Yeah, that was a huge directive that came not only from the DNC but from abortion rights groups everywhere. This.
I've heard. I've been on those calls, and I was one telling them you are ludicrous.
Yeah,
and I want to talk a little bit about that. You're running as a Democrat, and you are told from the powers that be, powers that are not going to give you any money, by the way,
right,
that you cannot use language that is more tepid.
Yeah,
and real, because realistically, everybody just wants the choice.
Yeah,
to be able to do what they need to do via their doctor and or their own personal situation.
Yeah.
So talk about that language. Here's the other thing. The consultants and everybody that is the powers that be, they're about to not be the powers that be.
Right.
So I am all for, and you don't need to name names. I'll look them up later. I will out them all.
Yeah.
Because second place is the first place loser, and you get no policy rights when you're out.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's my pulpit for a second. Go ahead. I'm done interrupting.
I can really only speak to the part of it that I experienced and was involved in firsthand, and so I will talk about the initiative movement to overturn Missouri's abortion ban. Was integrated and connected a lot with a lot of other empowerment movements and groups that were really concerned with building equity among marginalized groups, intersectional groups, women, minorities, and the choice to try to socialize the word abortion in a way that was more generally accepted, I think came about because they were trying to demystify it, destigmatize it, and get the country more comfortable with it. I chose to use language that I felt would resonate with the people we were just describing, the constituents and the citizens in my district who, I could speak to. My district, of course, very different from my neighboring districts or a district in, downtown St. Louis.
Right.
And so I felt like that was not only the prerogative, but the responsibility of every candidate was to know their district and speak to their district in the way that would resonate with their voters. I didn't run around saying abortion, abortion, abortion. I talked a lot about getting government out of your operating room. I talked a lot about owning your relationship with your healthcare provider because I felt like that would resonate with them. On a sort of semantic, strategic level, I understand what was behind this idea of let's destigmatize the word abortion. But to your point, we gotta win elections first.
You can't destigmatize from the bench.
Yeah, you can't destigmatize from the bench. Yeah,
Like
and a big part of that article that you have been referencing, and just a big takeaway for me, was the importance and at the end the power of semantics and communication avenues and channels that Republicans had access to that we didn't have access to. So again, I would knock on doors and people would be like, "You're great. I agree with everything you're saying, but isn't Kamala Harris, smuggling Mexicans in through the southern border?" It was really ingrained. And especially a lot of misinformation that they had picked up through social media. So, we were out there fighting this sort of highbrow fight over semantics when, we just needed to do what it took to win elections. The getting the word socialized is a longer process than a 2-year or 4-year election cycle.
Well, yeah, I would argue and add on to this that in agreement, take the other hot topic subject. There was many, but one of the other ones was really dealing in the terminology and the vernacular surrounding DEI and woke, etc. Since LBJ and that generation, through Dr. King, etc., where you talk about civil rights, you talk about equal opportunity, employment, etc. Adding new terminology and more acronyms that really are intended to push the narrative further created Newton's law, right? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And how is it that just super moderate independent, 'cause I'm an independent, I'm not a registered Democrat, I'm not a registered Republican. When we sit back, and obviously I'm a high propensity voter that reads a lot of news and listens to a lot of pods. When I hear this language, I theoretically, I do understand it, but it irritates me to the core. So, where were the focus groups, on your side of the aisle, the teams and the people that you were talking to? How come nobody was raising their hand and saying, look, this is not resonating. I'm telling you as somebody that wants to support you, that wants to vote for you, that these things and the way that you're simply talking about them and these tags and titles, they're going to cause you to lose. And they did.
Yeah.
In hindsight, hoping that you decide to run again, because I can tell that a district like yours just needs somebody that people can look at and be like, that dude's not fucking weird. I want to hang out with him.
That's what I thought. It only got me 4 points.
4 points. Well, you add another 4 to that. Now you're talking about a 4-point race, right? And it doesn't take much. If you do 50% better, you're at 6 points, which brings you to a statistical tie.
Yeah.
You're not far away.
Yeah.
And I think that people in that district, your district, districts everywhere that are, shades of purple, they just want fucking sane. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the arguments can be made on principles of, or on the basis of liberty and freedom and growth and opportunity. The Democratic Party did not connect those dots.
They didn't connect those dots. You're right. Yeah.
So what do you do? Because you put your money where your mouth is. You ran for office.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jokers like me that cop out on a microphone and sell all these solutions, but I'm not running for office.
Yeah.
So assuming you do again, what do you do different?
My immediate answer to that, it doesn't have a lot of difference. I start sooner and I talk to more people.
Yeah.
Frankly. I could have raised more money. I would have liked to have raised more money. I was running against a guy who put $700,000 of his own money into this race. So I was not only at a huge disadvantage demographically, but I was at a huge financial disadvantage.
Popping pimples pays.
Right. Yeah. And he invested in something and he placed a bet that he was going to make his money back because his legislative agenda is all about raising doctors' reimbursement rates as they go through insurance and Medicare. But
so you're saying there was an ulterior motive?
Yeah, I'm not even sure how ulterior it really was.
Now, here's the thing: like Americans have a lot of common sense in spite of what social media would portray. If you were able to effectively tell that story and play a little Sun Tzu, Art of War,
Sure,
and you illustrated his goals, do you believe that would have resonated?
Yeah, I do. I had I had several conversations, and by conversations I don't mean one-on-one. I mean like groups of people who came to me. Yeah.
Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
I got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about that quid pro quo that he was running on. Here in a second.
Great.
Okay, we're back. Oh, I'm going to throw my microphone on the floor here. We were just talking a second ago about the campaign, and your opponent in particular is actively working on legislation, policy, et cetera, that will, in essence, provide an ROI on the money that he spent out of pocket to run for that district. He put in $700K of his own money. The portions or the area that he's focusing on is doctor reimbursements. And surprise, surprise, he's a doctor. Explain to me how doctor reimbursement legislation is a benefit to House District 82 in Missouri.
Yeah, 89, yeah.
89, sorry.
That's all right. Well, it might be more of a benefit than it sounds because, as you mentioned, it's an affluent district. There's a few doctors there. I just
answered my own question.
Yeah.
How about for the non-doctors?
Well, I'll start with the doctors because I did actually meet quite a few doctors. We had an event that was Physicians for Morse, and that was in particular to kind of try to counteract what was, a constituency of his
world.
And people came to me over and over again and said, I'm doing fine. I don't need him to go in office and, further pad his own and my own pockets. I need a state representative who's going to stabilize the state, who's going to take actions to reduce some of this brain drain. That was another thing I talked a lot about, and it was big to people in my district. We're not only slightly more affluent, we're also slightly older. We've got a lot of people who've had kids who are in college or out of college and not moving back because Missouri, is screwed up in a lot of ways.
Oh, no.
St. Louis is scary. And
let's call a spade, man, because Missouri in particular, in suburban Missouri, where you have, I won't say wealthy, but I will say well above average households and communities. What I'm envisioning is a high-speed train that is approaching a cliff, and that cliff consists of, one, aging demographic. Baby boomers are starting to really drop off at a pace that we can expect. Guess what? They're at that age. Number two, they're the ones that hold the vast majority of the real estate assets in these areas, right? Number three, we already know that our kids that are coming out of college, even 20-somethings, 30-somethings, the Zers and the millennial generation, they can't afford shit.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, the people holding the properties that they really need to try and get into, that's the boomers that are not willing to give them up because they need this wealth for when they're dead.
Yeah.
Right? And then we have the macro optics of, I call it the Bateman effect, the Ozark effect of everybody looking at the state of Missouri and being like, you are backwoods idiots.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Eric Schmidt. You were the first one to sign a nationwide abortion ban. What that did is, forget about the fact that you tried to ban it for the whole state, but you and your PR team just announced to the whole country that Missouri is anti-women first.
Absolutely.
That's how I viewed that.
Yeah.
Right? That was a PR disaster.
Yeah.
So when you add all that stuff up, how are we going to bring people in?
Yeah, I know.
So when you're talking, when you're knocking on those doors and you're talking about that brain drain, were your potential constituents, were they viewing it in that light? Or was it one of those things where they have the kids that are going to Stanford and going to Ole Miss and going to all these universities all over the country. And then all of a sudden, they love their little Johnny or Jamie, but they're not coming home.
Yeah, yeah. That was a big thing, and that was something that resonated with them. And that was something I heard people bring up to me at the doors, and also I saw people react to when I would mention it. It's an issue. And another thing that I heard from a lot of people, and some of this is propaganda and some of it's legitimate, was I was born and raised here. I love St. Louis till I die, but I can't go to the city. I'm scared shitless. I can't go to a Cardinals game anymore because I'm going to get carjacked and driven into the river,
No, you're just going to go see a shitty product. Let's call it what it is. Everybody wants to talk about not going in the city. Well, I blame Bill DeWitt.
Yeah.
Spend some money on this payroll.
Yeah, there you go.
I digress.
But there was a real concern about, urban decay. And the fact that this city, this once great city, was beginning to fall apart. And, that a lot of that can be attributed to brain drain. So even though they're out in West County and they're in a pretty comfortable position, their kids are going to Stanford and staying in the Bay Area and sending home Bitcoin or whatever.
So let me ask you kind of a regional question then and get your take on this. You've been back long enough and you grew up here. You'll understand this because we mentioned the city of St. Louis and the perception from the haves versus, quote, the have-nots, even though the city, look, it's like the national politics. We could sit here and go over statistic after economic development and prove that all these narratives are not really that true, right? However, perception is reality. So what I want to ask you is your opinion on city-county merger, integration, reentry, whatever we want to call it. A couple of years ago, Better Together was the organization that was really spearheading it. It failed, but you live in, obviously in St. Louis County, one of the 98 municipalities or however many it is. How do you view the logistical and the organizational relationship between the city and the county?
It's a tough one. It's a big question. And there's legitimate concerns on both sides. My personal belief is that it would benefit the region long-term to do that, to merge. It'd be a huge logistical push. It would be an ideological battle like one we haven't seen in a while. It might force some people to come together and have some hard conversations, which would be welcome and needed, and kind of figure out a little bit of give and take or equilibrium between the two. But I do think that, you look at what's the city of St. Louis down to, like 200,000?
285,
Yeah.
We're basically sliding, we're shifting demographic from city to county.
Right.
I want to read just a quick blurb. As we're talking about this, it reminded me of a previous guest on the show, and I was really impressed by him. His name is Jared Holst, attorney at Riesenberger. But he's very active in kind of city kind of growth politics in general. Well, he put a post out about 3 weeks ago on LinkedIn, and I was checking it out, talking about comparing and contrasting what happens if we merge city and the county. He leads off with what do Orlando, San Antonio, and Charlotte have in common with St. Louis? The answer is the above cities have similar crime rates and populations as St. Louis when you combine the crime stats for the city and the county. When you look at those three cities, they're all arguably thriving for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
Orlando, the tourism trade, San Antonio is becoming more of a little mini tech hub. Everybody that can't afford Austin has been moving to San Antonio that wants to stay in Texas.
Yeah.
And then obviously Charlotte
Charlotte.
is feeding off of the banking industry and the universities in North Carolina because it seems pragmatic. It is a purple state. And a lot of kids that are, like these kids that we were just talking about that grew up in town and country that go to Stanford, and mom and dad would love them to come back. Where are they going? They're going to cities like Charlotte.
Yep.
And that statistic of crime, because that's the one. Nobody's really talking about housing stock.
Right.
They're not talking about your square foot prices. None of that. Cost of living, because if cost of living was legitimately a metric that people wanted to debate nationally, find a better city than St. Louis.
Yeah. Well, a list was just released this past week that has St. Louis in the top, I think, 5.
Yeah.
For housing markets 2025. Yeah.
Right. But
and when they say St. Louis, they meant the county.
Yeah, because what they want to do then is, and this is where I hate the ingenuous approach that, quote, smart conservatives play here in the St. Louis region of blaming the city and, you're a crime, you're our problem.
Yeah.
No. Our logistical structure is the problem.
Yeah.
Look, one dead body is too many. I'm never going to say that crime doesn't need to be reduced. But if we're talking about how we effectively compare and contrast to other markets in an attempt to bring in businesses, in an attempt to solicit college grads, et cetera, well, statistics matter.
Yeah.
Because they all want to say, well, yeah, the homicide rate's down, but what are they really counting as dead people, right?
Right.
Well, what the fuck is the difference whenever you don't actually combine our statistics for the county region, just like Nashville does, just like Indianapolis does, just like Chicago and Charlotte and all the rest?
Yeah.
We're the outliner. Us and Baltimore. Congratulations.
Right. Yeah.
Like, how do you approach that? How do you break that mental narrative to get people to realize, without downtown St. Louis and the cultural and institutional organizations that we have here, you don't have a St. Louis County.
No. Yeah.
So how do you fix that?
We got to elect better representatives.
Elect guys like me, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I'm the one. You're supposed to be on the soapbox here. I'm not.
I know, it's great. I'm just cheering you on.
No, let's not do that. Let's. I want to get into a little bit of your legislative priorities. We covered earlier. So you had 3 primary areas that were on your candidate page.
Yeah.
Abortion, gun safety, and education. I want to get into number 2, gun safety.
Yep.
Because you told a little bit of a story. You were painting a picture of your father.
Yep.
A Marine, educator, football coach, etc. I have to assume that you grew up with guns in your house, or a gun.
We did not. We did not
wow.
grow up with guns in our house. And, my father, with his background in the Marines, he taught me from day one, and he had been not a sniper, but I think was sharpshooter or something. He had some level.
So if you're not a sniper shooting humans, are you a sharpshooter that takes out light bulbs?
Sure. Yeah. Shooting the helicopters,
shoot the tire. Shoot the tire. I'm the non-lethal sniper.
Yeah.
Which is a sharpshooter.
I think it's maybe you can do it from 100 yards away, not 300 yards.
Well, what I'm getting at is, I have to assume, and based on your page and some of our conversation, you're not. I would definitely not call you anti-gun.
I'm not. I'm not anti-gun, and just to sort of finish that, my father instilled in my brother and me a respect for firearms, and he used to say to me, if you're going to own one of these, if you're going to shoot one of these, you better get trained and know how to do it right and safely. And that's where I stand on it. I'm a friend to hunters. I don't have a problem with overall gun ownership. I personally don't understand why someone would need an assault weapon. I feel like our representatives and people in our government whose responsibility it is to keep communities safe should take action against things like assault weapons. I also feel like obviously the question of gun ownership, topic of gun ownership, has been so politicized that there's no like stopping point. And so people who need to earn their NRA bona fides, are out there saying, yes, let a 7-year-old have permitless carry,
Right.
which obviously flies in the face of every bit of common sense, because this is a tool made for killing human beings and animals, and nothing else.
Well, this is where the language comes into play,
Yeah.
is what they'll do. And I'm not even going to get into the ridiculous constitutional arguments on this thing. They will say, no, it's not intended for killing. It's intended for me to protect my own.
Right.
It's for me to protect my flock, right, against a overbearing government, right?
But what does that mean? How do you
know
use it to protect? Right.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you.
I know. Yeah.
Like, guns do two things. They either, maybe three. Okay, you can scare somebody away. That's non-lethal. Yeah. You can scare somebody with a gun.
Yeah.
The 1B and C and 2 and 3 and 4 is you either kill the animal, or you maim the animal, or you kill the human, or you maim the human, right? I mean, there's no, in target practice, it's just in the event that, one day you gotta kill or maim a human.
Yeah.
And I get it. There's sport, whatever you want to do, clay shooting, and I'm totally fine. But to your point, you don't go, shooting clay pigeons with an assault rifle.
Right.
That's
Right.
just not realistic.
Yeah.
And now inevitably, somebody listening to this, it's a gun freak, is going to be texting me, no, I use my AR at the gun range. You don't know what you're talking about. Come on, let's. So what I want to lean into though is in anticipation, because again, I think that I don't know, and I'm not going. Maybe I will ask you if you're going to run again. But if you do run again, like, you're going to have those conversations. How do you balance the conversation in an attempt to be not anti-guns, but pro-gun legislation, and the difference between gun safety, community processes, be it red flag laws, et cetera, and versus the boogeyman that the NRA and, 2A freaks and the, Missouri red right throw out there, like, oh, they're going to come and take it all.
Yeah.
Explain in your own words the realistic difference between the two and how you see it being applied.
It's common sense regulation. We regulate everything else. Some things we regulate, to a ridiculous degree. And we all, I think, are familiar with the analogies with car ownership and registration and insurance and all that stuff.
Seatbelts.
Sure. Safety. But when I'm having conversations with red voters in my district, so much of what we've been talking about so far comes down to my leaning into their basic common sense and humanity, and feeling like underneath all of this sort of artifice and semantics and rhetoric, we agree on basic things. And the conversations that I've had with voters, again, who are on the other side of the aisle with me, comes down to, what do you say? You own a gun. You've got a gun in your home. What are the rules you lay down for your kids? What are the steps you take to protect and safeguard and lock up your gun? And invariably, they are prepared. They say, oh, I always lock up my gun. I'm very responsible with it. I tell my kid this. What's wrong with those, And do you feel like your freedom is infringed upon by taking those basic common sense responsible actions? And of course they say no, because they're still gun owners.
Right.
And it just comes down to that, And the right Fox News loves to tell every scary story of violent crime that happened, especially if it happened at the hands of an immigrant.
I always think of like, okay, from a communication strategy standpoint, again, another one of the macro failures of the DNC and et al. For example, like if you have somebody like yourself running in a clear-cut Republican district, those stupid fucking videos of flamethrowers or shooting guns or whatever, if you went out there in a red flannel, in a red and black flannel, and you're target shooting or whatever, and your message at the end of that little cute thing that makes you look like Newsom, right?
Yeah.
If you say, you know what? Bad guys should never have one of these, and I'm going to be your guy, right? And that's all you say. You don't say anything. You don't say, you clearly that's your gun. You're shooting. You're pro guns. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a gun, right?
Right.
But you're just against bad guys getting them.
100%.
Like that would be a cheap commercial to make.
Yeah.
And it would have a multiplier effect on relevance to your district that the Democratic Party just does not understand.
Yeah, that's a generalization. I think there are candidates out there who can.
Well, when I say Democratic Party, I mean big D, national D, and all the consulting firms that come along with it.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I don't want to go down the super deep rabbit hole, because at the end of the day, Missouri, if guns were ever fully outlawed, obviously that's never going to happen. Missouri would be the last one to acquiesce, and it just is what it is.
Yeah.
The third tenet that you had for your campaign: abortion, gun safety, and education.
Yeah.
One of the things that really kind of stood out for me was the way that you framed looking at education and in particular teachers. And I think obviously now knowing your story and understanding your background, your parents in particular, the way you view educators and now working closely with other educators is you're looking at it through a lens of firsthand, right, experience.
Yeah.
But you make the point of separating the difference between professionally compensated versus competitively compensated. And I have to assume, and I love what you did there, because it's really easy for people like Jess Piper and other, Democratic spokesmen across the state of Missouri to really make fun of Missouri from an educational standpoint and say, look, we're last.
Yeah.
We're last in paying, and that's competitively speaking, we're last. But you appeared to start to take a different approach to it. Why, one, and can you explain how you view or what you view the professionally compensated world looking like for educators?
Yeah. I can give a direct short answer to that, and I can give it a long answer to that.
Let's go short. And if the long one is too long, I'll edit later.
Okay. Great. So here's the short answer. The job of a teacher, I think we all can agree, is fucking hard. Mm-hmm. And it's a big job. And it requires a lot of education. Most states, Missouri included, in order to get a teaching certificate, you have to have a master's degree.
Right.
These are people who've done the work, who've committed themselves educationally, they've committed their career to, we can go into all of the rhetoric, educating the next generation, all that kind of thing. It kills me as a son of teachers, as someone who currently works on an educational payroll, and just as an empath across the board, to see the disparity between someone who's chosen that path and someone who's chosen the path of, oh, maybe I get a master's, maybe I get an MBA instead of a master's in ed. And the next thing you know,
Going to go sell pharmaceutical drugs.
They're going
Right?
to sell pharmaceutical drugs. Yeah. And capitalism being what it is, it values those people more highly.
Right.
At the very least, you can say their life is different and in many ways easier, or at least comfier than the life of a teacher.
Well, they are viewed as part of the free market economy.
Right.
Teachers are never viewed as that.
Right.
They are viewed as part of the municipal taxpayer economy. So you have that disconnect. But yet, the MBA from Wash U, SLU, SIUE, you take your pick. That graduate degree is the same expense as the graduate degree for the teacher to get their master's in education or whatever. Pound for pound, dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
There's not a difference.
Yeah.
But the exit value, and that's a whole other thing. That's where the pragmatist in me is like, I do look at the armada of teachers that are everywhere, and I know a lot of them, family members and friends, etc., that have gone down the path of Midwest Ivy Leagues for their educational process and degrees, knowing you have, this isn't a hypothetical ceiling that you're entering into. This is a hard cut ceiling. You will never make more than X amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, that's also like, okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line and the system is broke? Is it the cost of education, or is it the choice of the educational institution? And then the institutions that are hiring these teachers are like, well, we definitely want that Wash U grad, but we're only going to pay them, Eastern Illinois wages.
Yeah.
Ever.
Right.
So how do you true that up?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem. And that's the big question. Unfortunately, we're talking about something well beyond the purview of a state representative.
Yeah.
It's a societal thing. I think there's got to be a societal shift. I think that part of that shift has to include some sort of like understanding of fiscal responsibility to your community. So in other words, being okay with paying, a few extra dollars in your tax bill. I hate taxes. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, so I get it. But, it's not something we can legislate away in terms of that attitude. But it's got to change.
Let me ask you one more educational question that's a national subject, but it's come home to roost.
Yeah.
That is school choice. Simply put, what all it is basically Missouri legislatures trying to push through this bill, hidden in the veil of, quote, free choice, in which individuals will be able to use a portion of their tax credit value that they're paying, through their home, or I don't know the exact X's and O's, but basically they're taking what was previously earmarked as taxpayer funds intended to fund public schools, public school systems, public school extracurricular activities, all these things. And they're wanting to give people the choice to take their portion and apply it to their private school.
Yeah.
How does thoughts on that?
So they're approaching the school choice issue like so many other issues. There's a lot of cynicism and a lot of playing politics involved. But if we take that out and assume the most positive intent of everybody on both sides, it comes down to something that we see a lot, which is on the conservative side of the issue, there's an interest in the individual. And on the liberal side of the issue, there's an interest in the collective, I think. So Democrats, by and large, are against school choice because if you look at the collective, it will see a shift from a lot of the inner city areas out to the counties, weakening those schools that the kids are leaving. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
nobody from the county is going to move, going to go to North City for school.
Yeah, I mean that's their theory, but
yeah.
Here's the reality of the situation is, okay, so these private schools, right? Because the credit is anywhere, it's a low credit.
Yeah,
it's a couple $1,000s max, right?
Yeah.
Well, SLU High, and I know this firsthand, you're talking about $20,000 to $22,000 a year. right? Okay, show me the inner city family that has the other $18,000 available for them to go have school choice. Now, haters are going to say, well, there's charter schools and it's incremental, et cetera.
Right.
But what about the kid that lives in the middle of rural Missouri where there is only a four-walled community school?
Yeah.
And there are no private institutions, right?
Yeah.
We're decimating those areas as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a hard time with that one.
I'll tell on myself a little bit and say that I walk the line of this issue because there was a family in the school where my kids go who had to withdraw for financial reasons. They live in North City, and it was a single dad of 4 kids. I'm a single dad of 4 kids. We became close. Their kids would frequently stay the night at my house just because it's a long commute and he works nights, etc. So he and I became buddies, and he was talking to me and he was like, Eric, I don't know what I'm going to do for school for my kids. I can't send them down the road to the school where they've got to, walk through a metal detector in order to get to school. He was like, they will never survive it. They're not made for that.
Right.
They've been at this West County private school. We exhausted all of our, problem solving options, couldn't come up with anything. They ended up moving into my house. 2 of the kids, the one was in 8th grade. The boy was in 8th grade. The girl was in 10th grade at the time. And they lived with us for a year so that they could attend the Parkway School District. And we gamed the system, and it was probably against the law, although Parkway understood what was going on, and they were very, very supportive. And it's been an amazing experience for these kids. Really what it was de facto school choice. We were making it work so that they could get the best education. And again, Parkway has been supportive, and those kids are still in Parkway. So I have some firsthand experience and interest in it, and concern for the kids who are going to those schools where, they risk life and limb walking into school.
Yeah, I understand. My frustration is, okay, fine. Theoretically, that's a viable argument, but at the end of the day, school choice is really it will ultimately defund public schools.
Right.
Because the mathematics are what they are.
Right.
Especially when you live in a state like Missouri that has surplus thanks to the federal government. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
You're the one that cut those checks to our state that says, oh, you have a surplus, but they are not willing to invest it into our public educational systems.
That's right.
Okay, so now we're going to take choice. So what little they were getting is going to be cut by 15%, 20%, whatever that number ends up being.
Yeah.
Explain to me where we fix the public schools.
Right.
Be fixing anything in corporate America or public America requires money and a mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what's vacant in this pro-choice argument.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, I say I'm willing to entertain it. I'm willing to walk that line down the middle as long as there is a solution that will support public schools broadly, especially those schools that already are in such need of resources, things like that.
So we've been kind of dipping and dodging around this the whole time. You going to run again?
Right now, I can't imagine it, honestly. I've given a lot of thought to my West County community and, the article that you referenced and, updating Thomas Frank's classic "What's the Matter with Kansas" in my own mind to "What's the Matter with West County," there's so much potential there. There are so many good people who do have their heads screwed on right in a one-on-one way, in a personal way, but still are just like dialed into this, partisan propaganda. And so I don't necessarily know whether the answer is to keep engaging on the D versus R fight or whether the solution is something more kind of nonpartisan, community-based thing that just sort of opens people up to seeing each other.
More of a media approach.
Yeah.
I mean, it's content.
It's content.
It goes back to the very beginning. You know, when you set your phone up and you do your TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah.
All you're doing is talking to people.
Yeah.
You know, and right now the echo chamber that the vast majority of them are in is the red teams.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm excited that we're here to announce my new podcast coming out on the You Must Be Joking network.
There you go.
Yeah.
Tell me you're joking.
Tell me you're shit.
Tell me
that up.
No, it's all right, man. Trust me. It's a really dumb name. I don't know why I stuck with it. I think it's one of those things. Like I imagine so many conversations I have with people, friends, peers, kids I grew up with that are now diabolically opposed to some of the things that I believe or think. And I'm like, and I always just envision them like, tell me you're joking, dude.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's where I took it from.
Yeah.
So, but I don't mean it facetiously. I mean it like that's just kind of a collective sigh.
You got to be kidding me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to be kidding me was taken, though. So tell me you're joking. Eric Morse, man. Congratulations in your attempts and your valor.
I appreciate that.
You know, good luck with the kids in Principia, et cetera. And I would hope that you would reconsider. I think, look, 2 months away from something like that, that's not a long period of time.
Yeah. That's
a short period of time. And frankly, we're 8 days into Trump 2.0, which is really 1.0 on steroids.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling you might slowly reconsider. And if you do reconsider, happy to help. So
thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you coming on. If you made it this far, thank you. Like, review, follow, share. Tell me you're joking on all those fun platforms. Talk to you later.
Thanks again.